I don't think it makes sense to burn trash on a finite planet. We are burning resources. We're burning resources which we could use again, which our grandchildren will need to use again. If we're going to go spend billions of dollars in this country to go beyond the sloppy habit of disposing of trash in a hole in the ground, then we should spend those billions of dollars perfecting the art of recovery, not the art of destruction. The art of destruction is a dead-end road.
We have 10 acres here, which we have cattle on. And if the ash and everything falls on our pasture and poisons the ground, then it's going to poison our cattle. Then what am I going to have? We moved here, retired here, and we wanted to make this the rest of our life here. But if thing gets poisoned, well, we got nothing.
That's something that you could also get from an incinerator, would be groundwater contamination from the storage of the garbage on the site before you're incinerated, or from the ash, because in an incinerator you still have 30 to 40% of the solids left over, plus the contaminated water. Depending on what kind of system you operate, you could have a lot of contaminated water from the operation of an incinerator. So you could have contamination in a stream, say the Vermilion River, or a little coulee leading to the Vermilion River. And some fisherman downstream, or somebody, say trapeze, or whoever might be next to that, might have some action against the city for the contamination.
So there's no incinerator that I'm aware of that runs at a profit based upon the sale of energy. The profit for a waste-to-energy facility comes from the tipping fee, what the community pays this operation to take a ton of trash. You'll pay $40, $50, $60, $100 a ton, or whatever it is. That's where the profit comes from. However, part of the profit, not a large part, will come from the sale of energy. And if they don't get enough from that, that can affect, the less they get for the sale of energy, the more you'll have to pay for the tipping fee.
Louisiana, it's time to decide the fate of our trash. If we continue to be the throwaway society we are today, all that our children will inherit will be a world contaminated with landfills and hazardous ash, the product of trash incineration. Today in our government, there are officials who are in favor of incineration. More than 100 incinerators are operating nationwide today, and twice that many are in the works. Louisiana, let's learn from our neighbors' mistakes.
I think that the only way to go is recycling. And I'm kind of disappointed, although they're making every effort that they can, of the city, the county, and the state to promote this recycling instead of continuing to incinerate. Because to me, incineration is nothing but building mounds of ash. Because as you know, this is what I got from the experts now, I'm not an expert. For every 3 tons of garbage that you burn, you wind up with one ton of ash.
As you can see, the disadvantages of trash incineration far exceed the advantages. Let's take a closer look at this comparison. Proponents of incineration claim the high cost of operating the facilities is recovered by the energy it generates and sells. The problem is, unpredictable energy prices can plummet, making profits far below projections. In Palm Beach County, falling energy prices forced an increase in trash pickup fees. Officials there now expect to earn $6 million less than predicted for their first year. As usual, taxpayers and homeowners will foot the bill.
The fluctuation in energy prices, I think, can best be illustrated by an incinerator project in Crowley. Crowley built, I believe, 2 incinerators that were going to be fired by natural gas, and at the time that they constructed them, and it was a multi-million-dollar project, they had a fairly inexpensive contract for natural gas. But when the price of gas increased, their margin of flexibility was so small that they had to shut down the incinerators. And people in Crowley are still paying for those incinerators. So that if you build a facility and your economics are based on factors that you don't control, which is going to be the case in most of these, you can end up owning what would be called a white elephant, I guess, or a pig in a poke. And that's a problem with a lot of these mass burn incinerators, is they're very, very expensive. So that if you're not getting a tremendous return out of them, and you don't have a tremendous base of support of waste going into it that you can charge for disposing of it, you can find yourself with in the red, basically losing millions of dollars per year.
Yes, garbage can be burned. Proponents claim the volume reduction of trash after it is burned is 90%. Actually, it's closer to 60% when you consider things that can't be burned, materials that must be bypassed when the incinerator is down, or when it can't fit into the burner's hopper. Yes, there are companies which are able and willing to do it. Waste Management and BFI, our nation's largest haulers, also own 55% of Wheelabrator incinerators.
It's a scary business. Of the top 14 paid executives in this country, 7 are in the waste business. Waste Management is number 1. BFI, Browning Ferris, is number 2. Browning Ferris builds incinerators under the name American Refuel. American Refuel is jointly Browning Ferris and Airco. And they've built a number of large incinerators in this country. One in Hempstead, Long Island, one in Essex County, New Jersey, and I believe there are another few under construction.
Companies that do recycling and waste incineration come in, and they're still only telling part of the package. They're selling us a piece of the economics, a piece of the package, and never really talking about what the true costs are, because they want to make money. They're coming in to make money. And anybody that has a black box that's going to solve all your problems is doing it because they're going to make money at it, not because they're going to save you money or necessarily solve a problem.
Yes, the energy produced can be sold, although, as mentioned earlier, the recovery is small compared to the cost. And yes, the life of landfills will be extended, but at what cost?
If you don't get enough trash, if you don't optimize the use of that facility, you've either got to import trash from outside, or you've got to charge much more per ton to use that facility. And therefore, you will not get any meaningful recycling and composting going on if you've got an oversized incinerator in town.
And so how will that affect the community?
Well, it means that you, instead of solving your trash problem, you've gone into the trash business. Because you're now importing trash from other communities. You're not just solving your own problem, you're solving it for other sloppy communities that didn't do it the right way either.
If there's a problem at the facility and they can't sell their homes as a result of, so say they find out there's docks or heavy metals that have been coming out of the stack and it's contaminated the area, the city would then be very liable for contaminating the neighborhood.
A very important question for citizens to ask is, who has liability? Who has the long-term liability? If citizens' health is damaged, is it the incinerator company? Is it the state that permitted it? Or is it the local authority that said we will build it? Who has the liability? Who has the liability insurance? Who has the liability for the ash landfill? Who has the liability, the financial liability? Look, whilst many people focus on the environmental impact statements for these facilities, very few communities look at the contract. And often the whole house, the whole community is sold down the river in these contracts. A few local officials can sell the community down the river in that contract. It's very, very important that the community not only looks at the environmental impact statement, but also looks very, very carefully at the contract between the local municipality and the incinerator builder and operator.
I mean, the city is only sort of the corporate officers for the stockholders, and in the case of a city or a parish, the stockholders are the residents and taxpayers of that community. So it definitely comes right back to the residents of the community. I mean, the $1.3 million fine paid by the city of Lafayette was paid by the residents of Lafayette because their garbage was going into the landfill and caused the damage to the people around the landfill. So it would be the taxpayers.
There are several products of incineration which pose threats to our health and environment. Among these are acid gases, toxic metals, and newly synthesized organic compounds. The use of modern air pollution equipment can reduce pollutants. However, the better we get at controlling air emissions, the more toxic the resulting ash becomes.
Certain things cannot be destroyed. I think the popular image of burning is you destroy everything. Of course, you destroy no elements. So any metals which go into an incinerator will leave the incinerator. The best that you can hope for is you capture them with some air pollution control device. And if you do that, then these toxics are in the ash. When you burn trash, you convert 3 tons of trash into 1 ton of ash. And the standard toxicity test, that ash fails half the time, approximately half the time. It just doesn't make sense to convert 3 tons of trash into 1 ton of toxic ash that nobody wants.
And then in the waste to energy program, you still have to deal with all the solids and the contaminated water that's left over. And if that's not fixed into the cost, I mean, right now the biggest problem for the city of Philadelphia is what to do with their ash. They had a load of ash which they tried to dump in Panama, and it ended up going around the world. And according to the people who tracked the ship, they think it was dumped at sea in the Indian Ocean.
In addition to that, in the burning process itself, you make new toxic substances. We're extremely concerned about the generation of dioxins and furans, 2 families of compounds which are the most toxic substances that we've ever been able to make in the laboratory, and we make them with a simple act of burning paper and plastics together, or just burning trash.
Of course, recycling can't be implemented by the private sector alone. The government must get involved. Therefore, we must be aware of our politicians' stance on recycling and incineration. Why can't taxpayers' monies be used to implement recycling services as opposed to incineration and its pollutants? Let's get rid of waste completely.
Somebody asked me the other day, said, well, is this pollution the price that we pay for technology? And I say, well, the pollution is the price that we pay for allowing inappropriate technology to dominate, to allow thoughtless technology, to allow incomplete technology. I think we have the resources to look at products and the way we use materials and the kind of products and materials that we need to generate a fairly pollution-free world. But until we get serious about it, we're going to continue to contaminate the world and ourselves, and I mean, it's crazy.